In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself within a dark wood, where the straight way was lost. Ah, how hard a thing it is to tell what a wild and rough and stubborn wood this was, which in my thoughts renews the fear. You are listening to Carolina Haints. Welcome, dear listeners, to the Carolina Haints podcast, brought to you by Wreak Havoc Productions and A Darker World. I'm your host, Dan Sellers. The true geographical center of North Carolina is a small mountain peak in Randolph County called Purgatory Mountain. That statement comes with an asterisk, but I don't feel like explaining the variability of measuring the geographical center of a three-dimensional object. Trust me, you're better off not knowing. We'll just stick with the center of North Carolina is Purgatory. The story behind how the mountain got its name has been forgotten to time, but most attribute the name to the evil that lives there. During the Civil War, the area around Purgatory Mountain was primarily populated by Quakers, and to the Quakers, the idea of war and killing and slavery were very serious sins. Quakers lived strictly by the 10 Commandments, one of which being, "Thou shalt not kill." As a result, very few Quakers volunteered for the war, and the locals were not very happy when a recruiter was assigned to the community. However, the young man was polite and respectful, and came to be accepted as a friend by the Quakers. But as the war entered its final years, the South became increasingly desperate. They replaced the recruiter at Purgatory Mountain with a new one, and this time the Quakers' guard was down. The previous recruiter had been such a nice young man that they expected the new one to be about the same. He wasn't. Peter Garner was a big, burly man with a nasty, offensive disposition. He had spent the first part of the war hunting down deserters and returning them to the army. He was so efficient at his job that he earned the nickname, the Hunter. But for the last year and a half of the war, his duties changed. As I said, the South was desperate for new troops. So much so that they resorted to forcing young men into service. They sent thugs to kidnap people and deliver them to the processing center in Wilmington, in chains. Once there, they were told that if they wanted to keep their families safe, they would have to fight in the war. Peter Garner was, of course, the new recruiter assigned to the Quaker community. He brought a couple associates with him, and together they rounded up 22 young men from the community at gunpoint. The oldest was just 14 years old. The boys were chained together and marched several days toward Wilmington, 175 miles away, in the dead of winter. Along the way, the hunter began to hear rumors and mumblings of trouble from the war front. He stopped at the next tavern in order to get more detailed information. Of course, while there, he indulged in a bit of the local brew. Okay, maybe more than a bit. While he slept off the effects, the boys managed to break free from their chains and escape. To say that the hunter was not happy when he awoke would be an understatement. No one, and I mean no one, escaped from the hunter. The journey back home was difficult for the boys. They were tired and hungry, and winter now had the Carolinas firmly in its cold, harsh grasp. The hunter easily beat them back to Purgatory Mountain, where he searched the community looking for them. He was sure that their families were hiding them somewhere, but they weren't. As the days went by, the hunter's searching became increasingly destructive and violent as his rage seethed. When the boys finally did make it back to Purgatory Mountain, the hunter and his thugs were searching their family's property every day. The boys hid in a barn until nightfall. After dark, a few of them risked going to their families to bring back food for the others. They found their families beaten, some pretty severely. They were told that the hunter threatened to start executing family members if they didn't turn the boys over. Having seen the hunter's cruelty firsthand, the boys concluded that he intended to kill both them and their families, regardless of the outcome. They were left with a horrible choice to make. Even killing someone in self-defense was a sin in their community. But the alternative was that the hunter planned to kill them, their families, and who knows how many more until he was satisfied. In addition to food and rations, they brought back a couple of shotguns and an unthinkable plan to the barn where the others were hiding. Well before dawn the following morning, 3 of the best shooters were selected to set a trap for the hunter. One of the boys acted as bait. When the hunter emerged from his cabin that morning, the boy let himself be seen. The hunter gave chase straight into the boys' ambush, where the other 2 waited with shotguns ready. And, just like that, the hunter had become the hunted, the predator, the prey. The boys fired. The hunter fell, but the boys needed to be sure. They checked his body, and they cut the brass buttons from his uniform as proof. 6 months later, the war finally came to an end, and life went back to something close to normal for the Quakers. But their peace was short-lived. A few years later, reports started coming in of an apparition in a Confederate uniform wandering the mountain with a lantern, as if he were searching for something or someone. The locals claimed that neither heaven or hell would admit the evil soul of the hunter, that he was doomed to wander in eternal purgatory here on the mountain. Purgatory Mountain is now part of the 2,600 acres that comprise the North Carolina Zoo, just outside Asheboro. The zoo remains the largest natural habitat zoo in the world. There are about 5 miles of well-maintained paved walkways that visitors can walk through. But at the northern end of the North America parking lot is the entrance to a 1-mile hiking trail that leads to the summit of Purgatory Mountain. Park rangers assigned to the zoo overnight have reported seeing lights up in the mountain, meandering around as if someone with an old lantern was searching the hillside. Of course, they were obligated to investigate since it could be trespassers. But each time the search failed to locate anyone or to produce an explanation for the mysterious light. To learn more about this story, check out Haunted Historic Greensboro by Teresa Bain, North Carolina's Haunted 100 Volume 2 by Daniel Barefoot, and North Carolina Legends by Richard Walser. You can also check out nccivilwarcenter.org, northcarolinaghosts.com, courier-tribune.com, onlyinyourstate.com, and nczoo.org. This episode was researched and written by Jeffrey Cochran and was produced and hosted by me, Dan Sellers. You can find everything Jeff's up to at adarkerworld.com. You can find everything that we're up to at wreakhavocproductions.com. Be sure to like our official Facebook page at facebook.com/Carolina Haints. We're on Instagram at Wreak Havoc Productions, and I'm on Twitter at Hank vs. the Undead. You can find everything that we're up to, including the book Carolina Haints, Ghosts, Folklore, and Mysteries of the Old North State, at our website, carolinahaints.com. As always, you can subscribe to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Or you can listen directly from the feed at carolinahaints.libsyn.com. Do us a favor and share this show with a friend, and leave us a review. Every single one actually helps. And feel free to send us your questions and comments at wreakhavocproductions@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. Tune in then to hear more about the things that go bump in the night.